In this lecture, I'm going to talk to you about quantitative and qualitative analysis of companies. Now, first, let's begin with quantitative analysis. Now, the objective of quantitative analysis is it involves reviewing the financial standing and health of the company, which is critical to understand before we invest in it. Now, this is done through a thorough review of the audited financial statements in the annual reports. And what this requires us to do is also reading the fine print, which includes the notes to the financial statements. As such, financial statements include the balance sheet, the income statement, and the cash flow statement in addition to the notes. So each of these needs to be given a lot of thorough reading. Next, we need to compare the past performance with the current performance. So we need to understand whether the company has consistently made profits, whether the metrics such as earnings per share have been consistent as well. We also need to understand the growth in the revenues over a particular period. So say for example we look at 5 years, we see the general trend as to how the company is performing, what the dividend payout ratio is if it is a dividend paying company. Next, we also look at the performance with industry peers. So it's not enough by just looking at the performance of the company across various different years, but it also makes sense to look at how the company has performed in the industry versus several other players. So this gives us an understanding of what is its competitive standing, and there is a process where we can make a benchmark based on the metrics of all the of the companies which we are tracking in the industry, and then arriving at a score as to which of these benchmarked companies are performing higher. So in addition to this course on Udemy, there's another premium course which I have on analyzing annual reports, where I do cover some of these things in a lot more detail with actual examples, walkthroughs of real life companies. So if you're interested, do check that course out. It is priced at a very competitive rate. It's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. Next is performing ratio analysis of the company. So the ratio analysis is analyzing the different aspects of the company, such as its liquidity, its turnover ratios, to understand how it has been performing. So this is more in depth compared to just merely looking at the company's performance versus the previous year's company's performance uh, against its peers, etc. So the ratio analysis is then followed by computing the intrinsic value of the company. Now there are various methods of calculating the intrinsic value, but one of the most common methods that people do use is doing a DCF valuation. So you need to value the company using one of many methods available. Or there generally people follow one of two methods. The first is the yeah they use it they use this DCF method, or they use relative valuation. So you can use any of those to arrive at what the intrinsic value of the company could be. Next, you do what you need to do is adjust any risks that you have seen based on the performance of the company, based on the ratio analysis. Those risks will need to be adjusted with what is known as a margin of safety. So a margin of safety is a concept which has been borrowed from engineering, where the strength of construction used to be judged at a certain rate, and then from that adjustments were made to take care of further potential losses. So for example, a bridge has to be made, and the bridge has to withstand certain pressure, but they would keep a margin of safety that it would be able to withstand certain additional pressure on abnormal cases. So that gives the bridge a little more strength, and thus more confidence for the engineer to make sure that people will be able to cross the bridge without much tension. Similarly, when you make an investment, it's good to take a margin of safety. So this gives you a little more comfort over how much you can withstand this company going up or down. So this is slightly subjective in nature, and it depends on individual choice. So for I'll give you an example. If you look at the current ratio of the company, which is bouncing about and it's not at a very stable rate, you see that one year the company has a current ratio which is very healthy, and the next year it becomes completely unhealthy, where current liabilities far exceed the current assets, and then followed by that year again the current ratio becomes healthy. So the liquidity position over here seems to be unstable. So for unstable liquidity, you can probably put a margin of safety of say 5% of the intrinsic value, because liquidity does drive a lot of how the company operates its business. So some of us are a little more conservative, we would probably take it at higher at 10%. Some of us even more aggressive would probably go for 2%, but somewhere about 5% for any particular risk seems to be a reasonable bet. Again, more of this is covered in a lot more detail in the premium course. You can take a preview of that. I'll leave a link on the description if you're watching this on YouTube, and otherwise if you're on Udemy, you can just check my my instructor bio, and you can see the other courses that I have. Next is the qualitative analysis of companies. So qualitative analysis is what actually makes quantitative analysis complete, because without qualitative analysis we'll not be able to form an opinion which is which gives us more strength as to whether we need to invest in a company or not. So not only good financial standing can help a company really succeed, it needs to be driven by the right people. Now you might argue that a company which has been performing well financially has always the potential to grow, but that's not always been the case. We've seen how companies such as Enron and Lehman Brothers have all gone down due to poor accounting for various different under various different circumstances, but the idea was always how the management conducted its business. Have they worked with integrity? Have they worked with keeping in mind the best interest of the stakeholders, the customers, the shareholders, their employees? So that's something which is not completely possible for us to know exactly what the characters of these people are, but it's definitely a doable task to do some homework, and let's just cover what exactly that is that we can do. So the first is, again, to understand, it is actually much more subjective and time consuming than quantitative analysis. We need to gauge the strengths and weaknesses of the management. This is possible by reading about the company in depth. Wherever we get whenever we hear anything about the company in the news, we go and also check out their LinkedIn profile, any groups that the company has made, and what the interactions in the groups are, how the company has been presented on Wikipedia. Also, we read about the management of the the bios of of the management on Wikipedia or any other neutral venue. For example, we can look for Quora profiles, how these people conduct themselves answering any questions, in case they're pretty active on Quora. Another thing is, within the annual report itself, there is a section known as the management discussion and analysis. Unlike audited financial statements, this does not have much of a set format. So you can see that two companies will have MD&A which look very different, but what we need to do is we need to understand how the management is conducting itself within this. So you will be able to see what language they use, how they make promises, and how they actually fulfill those promises or not. One good way is go back 5 years and look at what the company's management had said would be the company standing 5 years hence. Say for example, in 2000, you can go and see 2010 reports, and then you can see reports today, and you'll be able to know whether the company has actually achieved its targets or not, and also see the change in tone. If it's the same management people who have been at the helm, and the company has not met its targets, what excuses are they making, or what points are they making which really make sense to you or not. So we understand uh, to this extent whether people are actually taking ownership or blaming it on circumstance. So there can be a lot of times they can say we made a wrong bet, and this is the path which we are going to take, or these are the mitigating risks, these are the mitigating factors for the loss that we've incurred so far compared to what targets we had. If that's the pattern, it's an attitude which is good. On the other hand, if they start blaming the economy, they start blaming something else altogether, they blame the industry, don't go by that, because there's a lot more which you can find out by reading other MD&As as well, so you'll get a good idea of how the industry has been doing. So if you're looking up pharmaceutical companies, don't read just one pharmaceutical company's MD&A. Don't stick to even two, try to do at least 3 to 4, so then you'll be able to understand how the industry's performance has been in the minds of such directors who are writing these MD&As. And you can also see any objective reports on the news to see whether it really ties up with that. Next is, yeah, so we've already covered this, analyzing the language used by the company. Any people using too many jargons which makes it difficult for a user to read is obviously not very keen on making things easy for you. So that's not a very good sign. They should be using simple language which helps explain what they want us to understand. So use of jargons is or too excessive use of jargons would be something which I would definitely not consider as a good practice. And for me, that also shows that they're not being fully transparent. So next is, you can see how they present themselves and talk on YouTube on the various subjects. uh, Oftentimes some people like to contradict themselves, which is not a good thing. It shows that they are not consistent, which is again a bad trait, and it is bad for a company overall. Next, analyze the customer experience. So customers are the ones who are the people who matter most, even more than shareholders. So if the company takes certain actions which are in favor of customers at times, and not that not favorable to shareholders, it's actually a good thing. But for us to understand as investors whether the customers are being treated well, we'll have to first slip into the shoes of customers and try and experience what they would experience. Say for example, it's an airline company that you plan to invest in. You can check out their website and see how easy or how difficult the company has made it for people to book tickets. Also, you can try and call customer care and see how customer support deals with customers. So if the experience is something which leaves you with a bad taste in the mouth, it's obvious that they're not doing the part where customers are kept are well taken care of, and this is a customer driven economy. So that's definitely something which is which you need to consider. Next is understanding the sentiment of employees. So if your employees are happy, your company moves forward. So the best way today is compared to any other time we've had before, is to go on websites such as glassdoor.com, where ex-employees or current employees are able to give reviews about companies. So a lot of these reviews can be sometimes too harsh. Don't go by any outlier reviews. Look at the ones which you feel really give you some insight as to how the company performs, because that's definitely something I've used, and I've gauged whether a company is really treating its employees in a fair manner or not. Based on all the qualitative analysis that you've done, you can adjust the margin of safety and arrive at the final intrinsic value. Well, that covers this lecture. If you're watching this on YouTube, please click subscribe for more videos in future. And if you're watching this on Udemy, do feel free to ask me any questions you have so far, and I look forward to seeing you in the next lecture. Thanks and bye for now.